Welcome to the Adult Basic Skills Professional Development video series. Throughout our productions, we are committed to excellence in adult education and professional development in basic skills instruction. The goal of this video series is to improve the effectiveness and quality of instruction through focused professional development.
During this time together, we will direct our attention to administering and interpreting an informal reading inventory. If you've not viewed the video IRI, it's important that you view that video first. The video IRI shows you the process for marking an informal reading inventory. The goals of this lesson are to give you additional practice marking and interpreting an informal reading inventory.
One of the first things I like to do when I'm getting acquainted with a student is to try to put them at ease, find out what they'd like for me to call them. I like to probe to find out what it is that they're really interested in, what some long-range goals, but also how they think that we can best help them achieve those goals.
Good, good, very good.
I like to inform the student about our procedures when we're trying to find out what they can do. I think it's important to let the student know that they're not supposed to be able to do everything just right. So usually when I'll give them a word list, and from that word list I'll tell them you're not supposed to know how to read all these words. But what we want to do is just find out which words seem to be pretty comfortable for them and where they begin to have a little struggle, because the words are arranged so that they go from easier to harder words. And then from that, we go into allowing them to read some paragraphs. And again, I let them know up front what I'm going to ask them to do. They read a paragraph for us, and then we usually take it from them, and then we ask them some questions about those paragraphs. But if they know initially what they're expected to do, and that it's okay for them to not do everything just right, then it puts them a little bit more at ease, and I think we get a much better information in our assessment process. I like to start off with a word list because it's very quick. It gives us a sample of how well this person can recognize print. And since the word list is typically graduated in difficulty from fairly easy words to much harder words, it can give me a much quicker sample as to where I might can place them in paragraph reading that would take a lot more time. So rather than spend 15 or 20 minutes reading a lot of paragraphs, the word list can be done in a minute or so. Yeah, word list gives us some very important information. It gives us some idea of what this person does when they come to a word they're not sure of. Helps us get some picture as to which words they seem to be able to instantly recognize. Also gives us some idea of how they go about decoding a word or phonetically sounding out a word. And it just gives us some notion as to where we might be able to start reading paragraphs. Since the word list is just sort of word calling, we need to go to real reading task in order to do a much more appropriate assessment of the reading process. Now, after we finish the words, then we have some paragraphs that I want you to read. You'll read the paragraphs, then I'll take the paragraph, and then I'll ask you some questions to see how much you remember about what you've read. So what we want to do again is find out what kind of material you seem to be able to read real comfortably. Where does it begin to have a little bit of trouble, and then where's it too hard for right now that we'll eventually get to. So the first selection that I want you to read is about Charlie. And he talks about some things he does in his life. And so if you'll just take this passage. When I start to ask a student to read a paragraph, I like to start off with some entry-level question or statement about the paragraph that gives the student some kind of clue as to what this paragraph, who it's going to be about, and maybe something about the paragraph before I actually ask them to read it. I think it's important when you're listening to a student read and the reading is choppy or the phrasing is off and they pause 3 or 4 seconds sometimes in order to figure out what the next word is, but it's not long enough to actually pronounce it for the student. I like to put a little slash mark to indicate that the phrasing is inappropriate. And that gives me a clue. Maybe the student is having difficulty with whatever that next word is. And so anyway, that choppiness gives me some clue later when I'm looking at the paragraph later that this was not real fluent. When marking an informal reading inventory, you're going to miss some things. And it's not any big deal. Don't worry about it. The main thing is to get the big arrows, and the more arrows you can get, the better pattern you can see what the student's doing. But it's not essential that you get every little mistake. When you have finished marking the oral mistakes that a student makes and asking the questions and indicating what answers they give, then you need to make a quick estimate as to whether the material or the way the student read this material, you need to move to something harder or something easier. At that time, I did not want to sit there and very carefully, meticulously count and mark every mistake and tabulate all that right in front of the student. I'll do that later. I just want to get a guess. If it looks like the student's done real well, I might move into something harder. If they seem to have some struggle, or maybe it's sort of borderline whether the material's maybe too hard, I'd probably move to something easier. Our goal is to find the student's independent level. That's where they read with ease, with very few mistakes. Where they have a little problem that we call instructional level, and then where it's too hard, that's where they're making more than 5% errors or understanding less than 70% of the material. So our goal is to give passages so we determine, or we can find out, what's the easy level for the student. What do we need to teach, and what do we need to avoid at this time? After I've finished working with a student in this initial assessment process, I like to take all the information, sit down, very carefully analyze it, try to see if I can find patterns, try to find what level I think that is independent instructional frustration for the student. Then I like to plot that on a chart so that I can remember at what's the range that's independent, what's the range that's instructional, and what seems to be too difficult at this time. I also like in that whole process too, in analyzing that information, to determine what I think the major strength is and what the major need is as far as instruction. When you think you have a good picture of what's too hard for the student or their frustration level, and you've got a range that you think is the instructional level, I like to go immediately to some materials that's approximately that level and ask the student to try them out. Give them an opportunity to get some idea of what they will probably be doing as far as the materials that they will be reading each time they come. And so by giving them the success experience, giving them some idea that this is what we're going to do, and allowing them to have some success in connection with sort of verifying your information that you're getting from your assessment, to me that's a much better sort of collaborative process where you're allowing the student to give you some input, helping you see whether your assessment process has really worked. The information that you will typically find on a flow chart would be the student's name, what they're interested in, what their goals are, other important information that would give you some clues about some things that are important to them, but also some instructional information from the assessment as to what's their independent instructional frustration reading level, what strengths they have in the area of comprehension and word identification, and will also give you some idea as to a sequence of what they probably need some focus on as far as continued instruction.
Let's meet our student. His name is Dan Green. He is 19 years old and works 35 hours a week at a fast food restaurant. He left school at age 16 and now wants to earn his GED. Dan's interests include playing basketball and spending time with his girlfriend. Dan will read the paragraphs found in your viewing guide for Case Study Part 1. Please mark the IRI passages while Dan reads. There'll be an opportunity for you to check your markings later in this video. For now, this is your opportunity to practice marking an informal reading inventory.
Now, after we finish the words, then we have some paragraphs that I want you to read. You'll read the paragraphs, then I'll take the paragraph, and then I'll ask you some questions to see how much you remember about what you've read. So what we want to do again is find out what kind of material you seem to be able to read real comfortably.
Where's it begin to have a little? You have a little bit of trouble, and then where's it too hard for right now that we'll eventually get to? So the first selection that I want you to read is about Charlie, and he talks about some things he does in his life. And so if you'll just take this passage, and then as you read, I'll sort of take some notes so I can keep up with where we are. And then so from these notes, I can try to figure out what we can do to help you read this better. Okay?
Okay.
So if you will, go
You
ahead.
ready? Okay. Charlie lives in a small farming country. He works outside a lot and wears overalls or blue jeans. On his farm, Charlie grows corn, cabbage, and green beans. He also has some animals, except a hog and horses. Charlie likes to see a cool rain and snow shower, but doesn't like the ground to
Freeze.
Every day on the farm has to be so that thing is neglected. Through farming is hard work. Charlie thinks it is rewarding. Charlie takes care of himself and enjoys his independence.
Okay, good try. Let me take this and let me ask you some questions, okay? What kind of work does Charlie do?
He's a farmer.
Okay. What does the word overalls mean?
It's a jeans with a bib with the front straps.
Okay. Why does Charlie like rain?
'Cause his crops need water.
Okay. Why doesn't he like the ground to freeze?
'Cause it'll kill the plants.
Okay. What does the word neglected mean?
That word means like to ignore stuff.
Okay. And what does Charlie think of farming?
Well, he likes it.
What does independence mean in the story?
That he works for himself. That he's his own boss.
Okay. What crops does Charlie grow?
Potatoes, tomatoes.
Can you tell me more?
Oh yeah, corn, green beans. Yeah.
Okay. Why might Charlie like taking care of himself?
'Cause it always feels good, you know, when you don't have to ask somebody for help.
Okay. What does the word community mean?
Like Franklin community, a place where people live.
Good, good. Very good. This is a selection about Jean and her husband, Mark. So let's read to find out what they did.
Okay. Jean, I will be bringing a geese for dinner tonight, said Mark. It is someone I know. Mark asked Jean. No, he is a new member of the company, Mark said. Jean asked, what should I serve? They decided to have chicken. Something to make. With vegetables and rice. While Mark was at work, Jean went downtown to shop. She picked up chicken, mushrooms, carrots, and tomato. Then she bought a pumpkin pie. As Jean arrived home, her excitement grew. She enjoyed planning dinners for special events. When Mark and his guest arrived, dinner was ready. Delicious as usual, Jean, said Mark.
That's good. Okay, let me ask the questions again, okay? Who is Mark bringing for dinner?
A guest.
Okay. What is a good title for this story?
A guest for dinner.
Where did Jean go to shop?
To the grocery store.
Okay. What did she do after she bought the chicken and the vegetables?
She got a pumpkin pie.
Okay. What does the word delicious mean in this story?
Great cooking.
Okay. How did Jean feel about Mark bringing someone home for dinner?
She liked it.
Okay. Did Jean know the person Mark brought for dinner?
No.
Was the guest a man or a woman?
He was a man.
How do you know this?
Okay, he seemed like a man.
Okay. What happened after Jean bought the pie?
She went home and she fixed supper.
Good. Good. All right, here's another one. Okay, let's read this one. This is a selection about John and Mary, and they're planning to go someplace. So let's read about this one. Okay.
John and Mary have an apartment in the city. He is a doctor and she works at the bank. They are planning to go to the beach Friday. We need to pack our things tonight so we'll be ready to go after work tomorrow, said John. Yes, agreed Mary. I suppose we should. What kind of weather will we have? Asked John. Mary told him the days would be sunny, but it might rain Saturday night. They decided to take some warm clothes for the evenings. We'll need towels for the beach, said Mary. Soon they had their bags packed. Let's get some sleep, Mary, said John.
Very good. Very good. Now let's look at the questions on this one. Where did John and Mary live?
They live in an apartment.
Good. Where does Mary work?
At the bank.
Okay. What is a good title for this story?
The beach.
Okay. Why did Mary and John decide to take some warm clothes?
Rain. It might rain.
Okay. What will they do with the towels at the beach?
They'll lie on them.
What does the phrase "their bags" mean in the story?
Like their suitcases and
Good.
stuff.
When did they pack?
They pack before leaving.
Okay. Why did Mary and John need to go or need to get some sleep?
They have a long trip after work.
Okay. And what else might they have packed for the trip?
A surfboard?
Yeah, you surfboard?
Yeah, I have before. I rented one.
Ah. And why did John ask about the weather forecast?
So he would know what he had to pack.
Okay. Okay.
Well, how did you do marking the informal reading inventory? You may wish to have more practice by reviewing this video or practicing with a coworker. Now let's spend some time interpreting the IRI.
If you'll notice, we started off with allowing him to use a modified approach. He put a check mark beside the words he instantly recognized. The information from the word list would suggest that he can instantly recognize with very little problem the first four sets of words, AAA through B. C, he had a couple of words that he had to think about a second or two. List D, the same. List E, he didn't know one of the words but had a little more struggle. And list F, he really had a lot of trouble. He circled more than half the words. So on the basis of that, I made a decision to start with paragraph D. After listening to him read paragraph D and answering the questions, that seemed a little difficult. He was struggling. It was very choppy, so I thought this was at least a frustration reading level, and so I wanted to move to something easier. So I moved from D down to C to have him read paragraph C the next time. In observing his performance on these passages, I believe that he would do much better to have instruction at level C, with a lot of easy reading at levels B or below. Level D at this time seems to be too hard. He's having a struggle. This would not be comfortable. He would need a lot of assistance if we were to try to use level D materials with him at this time.